Hey guys, what's up? So in this video, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about bipolar disorder. So how many times have you ever been at a friend's house, a party, a family gathering, even at work, where, somebody goes, I think I might be bipolar. My mood is swinging all the time. I'm always changing. Or I know somebody who has bipolar disorder, right? You hear this all the time, everywhere you go. People think they're bipolar. People know people who are bipolar, etc. So what I want to do is add some clarification here. So if I did think I had bipolar, what signs or symptoms would I be looking for? What would kind of prompt me to think maybe I need an evaluation by a psychiatrist to help clarify whether or not this is truly something that I have? Because it can be very difficult to do some daily activities if you have this disorder. It can be very challenging. It can definitely impair function. So let's kind of go through and talk about a little bit of the things that we as psychiatrists look for if we're going to diagnose somebody or potentially think about somebody having bipolar disorder. So first of all, just a kind of a general overview. What is bipolar disorder, sort of in a nutshell? This is something I would say to any of my patients. So it's a mental disorder. It's characterized by episodes of mania and depression. The person's mood generally swings from overly high or irritable to overly low, very, very depressed. And this cycle then repeats, and they may have periods in between where their mood is actually very stable and they're very high functioning. That's possible. It usually begins in adolescence or early adulthood and generally continues throughout the person's life. So this is a lifelong disorder that usually requires treatment throughout most of their life. Compliance is always an issue though. Um, Bipolar disorder has a very strong genetic component. It tends to run in families. So if your mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and you're exhibiting some of the traits, it's quite possible that you may have the disorder as well. Same thing goes for your father and other genetic relatives as well. We ask, about aunts, uncles, grandmothers, grandfathers, etc. But the further you get away from the immediate family, the less strongly the genetic component will be. So if I think I have bipolar disorder, or I suspect I may have it, what are some of the things I'd want to look for? Well, you'd want to look for any signs or symptoms of mania, and we'll get a little bit more into detail as to what a manic episode actually is in a further slide, but for now, we'll say that these include things like increased energy. And I'm not talking about just feeling good for the day and having a little bit of increased energy. I'm talking about having energy for days, where you have decreased need for sleep, which is extremely important in diagnosing this disorder. It has to be a decreased need for sleep, not just decreased sleep, because sleep is an issue in many, many disorders, including depression. So separating these things is really important. You may be overly talkative. People may say, I can't really understand what you're saying. You're talking so fast. You're jumping from topic to topic. It's hard to follow. They may have increased goal-directed activity. They may have a bunch of projects that they're working on. Of course, people with this disorder tend not to finish any one project, but they may have multiple different things. They're working on business ideas, etc. And they may describe that to you as the clinician as racing thoughts. So if my thoughts are racing, I'm so distracted. I can't jumping from one topic to another. It's so hard to concentrate. This is the kind of thing we might be looking for. They have the excessively elevated mood. Some people would describe this as euphoria. You feel so amazing. It's the best you've ever felt in your entire life, which is why a lot of people with bipolar disorder actually like the manic episodes. They enjoy being manic because it feels great. They may also exhibit extreme irritability, which is sort of the opposite spectrum of the elevated mood. They're just irritable about everything. Basically, they're confrontational with you on everything that you say or do. They just are overly, imagine the most nasty, difficult person to deal with. That's kind of how they would be if they have more of the irritability predominating. They may have unrealistic beliefs about their abilities or having special powers. I can lift this amount of weight, even though they probably cannot. They may have unrealistic beliefs about their intelligence. I'm so intelligent. I have multiple degrees. I'm a PhD. I know more than most people, etc. They will tell you all these kind of things. They may have unrealistic beliefs about one's looks. They may say I'm the most attractive person. People love me. I could get any woman I want or any man I want. Things of that nature. During these episodes, they tend to exhibit also poor judgment and impulse control, meaning they're not able to really distinguish. They do whatever feels great. and they'll do things that may get them in trouble. And this is where you, as say a psychiatrist, may see this person in an emergency department. Because if they are doing impulsive behaviors or acts that could get them hurt, so they're a danger to themselves, or they could hurt someone else, it could be a danger to others, then these people may come in for evaluation in an emergency setting. Examples include things like spending lots of money. I got my credit card, I went out to the store, and I felt like I needed a whole new wardrobe, so I spent 10 grand on my credit card. I maxed out all my credit cards. I took all my money out of the bank. I went to the car dealership and bought the most expensive car on the lot. These kind of behaviors, and they do happen, and people do these things. High-risk sexual activity is also very specific for bipolar disorder. The patients during these manic episodes tend to be very sexual. They tend to be preoccupied with it. Again, they may feel like they're the best looking. They can have any man they want. They're more likely to engage in high-risk sexual activity, unprotected sex, etc. And so that's an important screening question to ask as well. Excessive alcohol and drug use, particularly cocaine on the drug use spectrum, and alcohol use, again, which further disinhibits the person, which contributes to further poor judgment and poor impulse control. So they're kind of trying to keep that high going, keep that euphoric feeling going, because again, it feels good. And they'll definitely deny that anything is wrong. They'll most likely accuse you of having something wrong with you, as opposed to them admitting that their situation is a little out of control at this point. The opposite end of the spectrum with bipolar disorder is that they tend to have depression as well, and many of the patients will present to the hospital during the depressive phase. Now this makes it very complicated, because say you come to me and you're not exhibiting any manic symptoms, you're not distractible, you're not elevated, you're not doing you don't have poor impulse control, you're just really, really depressed. Now I need to distinguish, well, is this just more of a major depressive episode or some type of depressive disorder, or is this actually a bipolar disorder, but you're presenting during a depressed part of the disorder or depressed phase? Now that's challenging and tricky. So I may say, I think it's just depression. Now I give you an SSRI or other antidepressant medication, and now all of a sudden the next day I see you and you're talkative, you're pressured, you have flight of ideas, you're going all over the place. At which point now I need to reevaluate my situation, say, well, maybe I missed or didn't screen for some of the symptoms of mania in your lifetime. I didn't ask you at any point, have you ever had decreased need for sleep? Have your friends ever said, you're talking really fast, you're very pressured? And if they say, no to those things, then there's nothing you could do about it. But if you didn't ask those questions, then you don't know. So the mood for a person during a depressed phase, I think, is very intuitive. You'll be sad, down, anxious, depressed. People will describe their mood in various ways. You may experience excessive guilt, including feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness. So I'm not worth anything. I can't do anything right. And the hopelessness one is really, really important for suicide. It's actually a very specific description. You want to watch out for a patient who says, I feel just completely hopeless. I feel like nothing in my life will ever work. It's just not possible for me. So if they describe the guilt as hopeless, then that's an issue. You want to definitely further ask about suicidality at that point and kind of probe as to whether or not they've ever attempted, whether or not they've had any suicidal thoughts recently, etc. They also have loss of interest, so this we call anhedonia. There's loss of interest in pleasurable activities, recreational activities, including sex, so there's loss of interest in sex as well. There's decreased energy during this phase, which is the opposite of the manic episodes. There's trouble concentrating and making decisions. They may be very indecisive. They may not be able to read a chapter in a book. I like to ask, could you watch your favorite TV show all the way through? Or would you feel so distracted that you couldn't even sit through a single episode of your favorite show? Because not everybody's reading, not everybody's studying in university, etc. They have sleep disturbances, generally difficulty falling asleep or difficulty remaining asleep. Loss of appetite with or without weight loss. It depends on how long they've been depressed. And some people could present with chronic pain, so somatic symptoms not caused by physical illness. So essentially we've ruled out all the physical causes, but they continue to complain of whatever, back pain, leg pain, knee pain, etc. it may be the result of depression, and of course, thoughts of death and suicide. So, how is bipolar disorder generally treated? Well, the most effective treatment is, of course, a mood stabilizing medication, and the gold standard of mood stabilizing medications, the one that I've had the best success with, is lithium. It's a good time tested medication. For a long time, it was the only choice we had for treating mania and bipolar disorder. And now we have other choices as well. So, again, first line medication lithium. Another good choice that I consider pretty high on my list as well would be Depakote or valproate. And there's also some combination treatments for bipolar depression. That would be olanzapine, which is an atypical or second generation antipsychotic medication, also indicated for bipolar disorder, with fluoxetine, which is Prozac, and that is your typical SSRI antidepressant. Other antipsychotics that have been used in the treatment of bipolar disorder include quetiapine, risperidone, and several others. So hopefully this gives you guys a basic idea of some of the things we as clinicians look for when we're diagnosing bipolar disorder. And hopefully if this is helpful, you decide to subscribe.